Hines from TotalWellnessHealthCoaching.com. Welcome to my kitchen. It's October where I live in North Carolina. We have crisp, cool weather. The leaves are turning. It is the best time of the year, in my opinion. And I am making a special fall treat for you today, which can carry you all the way through Thanksgiving and really anytime, because pumpkin spice cookies would be delicious anytime, right? We're actually going to make them pumpkin shaped today, but you could use the same recipe, make them round, turn them into leaves, turn them into turkeys, cornucopias, whatever you'd like to do. I'm going to show you some decorating techniques as well. This is a simple gluten-free cookie recipe. It is not paleo. This is not dairy-free. As you can see, I have grass-fed butter in my bowl, but I have tested this recipe with palm shortening, and it works perfectly well. So we'll just kind of talk about that as we go along. But it's a pretty simple rolled cookie recipe, and the cookies are super yummy. So this is how we make them. This recipe, so this is a big cookie cutter. This is the Wilton pumpkin cutter, and I like mine a little bit thicker. So I can tell you this recipe makes 24 cookies, but if you make yours thinner, use a different shaped cookie cutter, you could get 3 or 4 dozen cookies. You could get tons more. You could get less. So the number of cookies this recipe makes will vary, okay? But here's the recipe, and you will be able to find this on my website. There will be a link down in the description box. It's free. It's a nice printable version, so you can print that out, make your recipe binder. And I do have a lot of paleo recipes already on the website, and I have some more paleo ones coming. Actually, as I'm filming this on a Tuesday, I usually publish a recipe on Mondays, and when we've got our act together, we publish videos on Mondays too. I just published yesterday my paleo chicken pot pie, which is amazing. It's so good. It's totally paleo. It doesn't feel like diet food. It's indulgent, comfort, warm food. It's delicious. The week before, I believe what I published was jambalaya, which is also paleo. So I am making some treats in my own home and showing you how to do it that are, do include some sugar, do include some dairy, but the base of our diet is still paleo. And so I have lots and lots of recipes to support you in that. But if you can enjoy a little gluten-free treat from time to time, this will be a really fun one to try. And they end up super pretty too, and you could give them as gifts or take them to a party, whatever. Okay, let's get started. So we need 3/4 of a cup or 12 tablespoons. Am I telling you that correctly? Now I feel like I've done it wrong. Yeah, 12 tablespoons of butter. Or you could use palm shortening and it would be the same amount. And we're going to cream that together with 1/2 cup of pumpkin. So this is just pumpkin in a can. If you pick your own pumpkins and you cook them and make your own pumpkin puree, perfect. I have done that in the past, and I find that it's a little waterier than the canned version. So just know if you are not using canned pumpkin, you may need to add a little bit more flour, but I'll show you what the dough should look like. And it's actually fairly flexible. This is not pumpkin pie filling. It's just canned pumpkin. Okay, so we're going to cream these together. One regular large egg. I did have my butter at room temperature, but not very long. Grass-fed butter comes up to temperature, to room temperature pretty quickly, I find. And it's also a little bit of a softer texture to begin with, so you shouldn't have to leave it out for a super long time to soften enough to work with. And usually I don't use a mixer, but with stiffer cookie dough like this, I'm just making my life easier by using a mixer. I'm just going to go ahead and put the sugars in. It's going to be totally fine. This recipe uses 1/2 cup of white sugar and a half a cup of brown sugar. I don't pack the brown sugar. I don't think you need that much. So this is organic light brown sugar from Thrive Market. It's more of a loose texture, like granulated sugar. You know, if you buy the brown sugar just in the baking aisle at the grocery store, it tends to be kind of clumped together. This organic sugar is not like that, so it's a little harder to pack it into your measuring cup anyway, so I just measure it just like a loose white sugar. You could use maple sugar, you could use coconut sugar if you want to. That will certainly affect the flavor, but also those sugars are just so expensive that if I'm already not making a paleo recipe, I will tend to not use my expensive sugars. You know what I mean? I'll save that stuff for Thanksgiving, Christmas, or when we're really tightening up our diet, you know, if maybe somebody's having some symptoms and we just really need to cut the refined sugar, then I would certainly use the paleo sugars. Let me just scrape down my bowl. Okay, so I am not a trained chef. I don't play one on TV, but I have cooked for a long time, so I have a lot of experience. And I also read a lot of recipes. I'm looking for my measuring spoon. Here we go. And I know that a lot of baking recipes will say to sift together your dry ingredients and then you add them to your wet ingredients. I just have found that that is almost never necessary. So I just don't do it. It just dirties up another bowl. It takes extra time. I just don't do it. But I do, and also, you know, they mix all the dry and then they mix it in with the wet. A lot of, like if you see a recipe that says just add your flour and stuff, they'll add the flour and then they'll add in our case, spices. I add my spices first because I can see if they're really well distributed. If I add my flour first, it's a little harder, I find, to get some of the other ingredients, the other dry ingredients incorporated as well, or I don't know if they're incorporated as well. So I will add all my dry stuff first. So that was 2 teaspoons of baking powder. And now I need 2 teaspoons of cinnamon. Now look, you do not have to be super specific about this. You want at least this amount. I'm kind of a rounded teaspoon here. It's fine. It's fine. You can have a little bit extra spices. So cinnamon, ginger. So we want a teaspoon of ginger. That's not quite full. There we go. I would put allspice in because I do like a little bit of allspice. But that, for some reason, that kind of bothers my dad. I don't know if he just doesn't like it or if it gives him an upset stomach or whatever. But I don't usually include allspice just because we'll share with him. Okay, so this is a teaspoon of cloves. And then I think nutmeg is super strong. I like a little bit of nutmeg, but I don't like a lot of nutmeg. I would show you a whole one, but mine are all older. But nutmegs, they're like these little nuts. That's like mostly a half of one. And I grate them on my microplane grater, which makes it hard for me to give you a specific measurement. So my recipe is going to say a dash of nutmeg. If you were to grate this out on like a piece of parchment and scoop it up and put it in a measuring spoon, that would not even be 1/8 of a teaspoon. It's just a little bit. I find that the fresh ground nutmeg, it is much stronger than if it was already ground in the spice container, and it can be too strong. So just a little bit of nutmeg. So I'm just mixing this in with my rubber spatula, as you can see. Okay, I told you I would tell you about using palm shortening. I think it is the best dairy-free fat for baking. If you want or need to be dairy-free, I recommend the one from Healthy Traditions. I'll link it in the description box. They put it on sale usually 3 or 4 times a year, and I buy a couple gallons of it. It lasts a long time as long as you're careful. You always want to scoop into it with a completely clean spoon or measuring cup or whatever, because if you introduce like if I used this spatula into my palm shortening, I would introduce all this stuff, which would introduce bacteria potentially, and then your palm shortening would go rancid. So just always make sure you keep it clean, and then it will last for a very long time. The palm shortening, dough made with the palm shortening will be a little bit softer, and the finished product will actually end up a little bit crisper, which is interesting, and it doesn't have as much flavor. Grass-fed butter has a delicious flavor, and that will come through in your cookies. So if you want to use or need to use palm shortening, I would just add a little bit more of each of those spices. Maybe not the nutmeg, but that's a personal choice. If you love nutmeg, add more. Just to make up for the fact that you're using palm, which has no flavor whatsoever. Okay, so I'm not going to use my fingers. I want to keep my fingers clean. So let me just clean this off. So I've mixed in my spices and my baking powder, and I can tell that they're really well mixed. Something that you might wonder if it's missing in this recipe is salt. And I do almost always put salt in my baked goods. I mean, always. But this recipe does not have any salt, so that's not a mistake. I prefer King Arthur 1-to-1 gluten-free flour, but I will buy what's on sale. And usually at Thrive Market, which I know you're probably so tired of hearing me talk about it, but it's really where you should be shopping if you are buying these healthier ingredients. It's just going to save you money in the long run. And I'll put the link down below that will get you, I think it's still $40 off your first order. They usually have one of these on sale multiple times a year, either Bob's or King Arthur. They're very, very similar. They work similarly in recipes, so I would say they're pretty interchangeable. Gluten-free flours are very fine. You do not need to sift. I don't know, unless you've got rocks in yours, but they're very fine. So I just kind of lighten it up, loosen it up, maybe. I'm not sure how to say that. Fluff it up with my measuring cup. And I went 2½ cups. And so we're always learning, right? Hold on, I have to count. Honestly, I've done paleo baking for so long, and I'm really fairly new to gluten-free baking. And so I have just been learning some more about it. And one of the things that I have discovered that I want to pass along to you is that these gluten-free flours, if you've worked with them, you've probably noticed this, but they're very dry. They're more drying than a wheat flour. And so if you just take a recipe from, say, the Food Network for pumpkin cookies, actually that is where I got this recipe from. It was from the Pioneer Woman, and I have changed it, obviously. But say that recipe calls for 4 cups of all-purpose flour. If I used 4 cups of gluten-free flour, my cookies would be so dry, and the finished result, like the dough might come together fine, but the finished result would be very, almost sandy, just not as pleasant of an eating experience as what you want. So the gluten-free flours need a little bit of time to absorb the liquid. So this dough, I'm sorry, it's a multi-step process. It's not hard to make. It doesn't take weird ingredients. We're going to mix it really well. Let me do that now. So I have said to you in the past that, oh, it's gluten-free. You don't have to worry about mixing a whole lot because it's not like we're trying to develop the gluten, which is true. We're not trying to develop gluten. There is no gluten to develop. However, the flours are very fine. The rice flours, potato flours, that sort of thing. And they take a little bit of work to, we need to expose them to all of the liquid thoroughly and allow them time to hydrate. So, actually drop some liquid on the counter. Y'all, I do not like to waste ingredients. Things are so expensive. It drives me crazy when I watch people make a recipe and they leave half of the stuff in the bowl. So I do want to scrape, uh-oh, that was the egg for my icing that just went plop on the floor. So I'm going to deal with that real quick. I bet you're thinking, egg for icing? That's weird. And in fact, it is weird. But it's kind of an old-fashioned thing, and I will explain it to you. Okay, but back to the flours. We need to allow our gluten-free flours time to absorb the liquid. So this dough is obviously too wet. We could not roll this out. We could make drop cookies with this, but we could not roll this out and cut out pretty shapes, which is what we want to do. So we're going to set our timer for 30 minutes, and we're going to let this dough just sit and absorb, and then I'll show you the next step. Okay, so I forgot to turn the camera on. I had the overhead on, but I didn't have that one on. And now I probably look shorter because I took my shoes off because I was about to walk out the door. And so I got the dough out of the fridge to show it to you again. And it pulled out a container full of homemade pickles. And so it smells like pickles in here. My feet smell like pickles because it just dumped all over my feet. And I made a huge mess. So, anywho, redoing. I've obviously already taken the dough out. I showed it to you. So, you can probably tell that it looked a little bit drier, but it's not going to be super discernible through the video. I have put it in plastic wrap. I was telling you to just kind of squish it down, make it flat instead of a big ball. A big ball will take longer to chill. If you flatten out your dough, it will chill faster. So even 30 minutes would be plenty, but mine will probably chill for about an hour because I have to go to the grocery store. So wrap up your dough, stick it in the fridge, go do something else, and then come back and make cookies. Okay, the dough has been chilling, and I'm getting ready to roll it out and cut it out. I love these parchment sheets. They're really nice. These unbleached, if you care, parchment sheets. Guess where I buy those? If you guess Thrive Market, you'd be right. Yes, it's cheaper to buy a roll of parchment paper. I do like the unbleached, which is of course more expensive. And the, oh goodness, what was I saying? The unbleached is more expensive than the bleached. I don't know that one is significantly better or worse for your health. It just seems like the unbleached, the more natural, is better. You don't have the harsh chemicals and such. But both are better than foil. So I would recommend parchment. Line your baking sheets to make your life easy. Put a little bit of your flour on the counter. And begin to roll out your dough. You'll need to put a little flour on top too, but I'm going to move it around a little bit first. I have my bench scraper. I just found when I was linking things for, oh, it was the biscuit video. I was looking for a pastry cutter to link. I don't have one, so I just went to Amazon to find one. So when I talked about it in the video, people would know what I was talking about. And I found a really great deal. It was $20, and it was the pastry cutter, a whole set of biscuit cutters, and a bench scraper, and the cutting mat, which my mom had one of those cutting mats back in the day that had a bunch of different markings on it, so you could roll your pie crust out to the right size, that sort of thing. It's like when you read a recipe and it says, roll your dough out to a 12-inch circle. You know, most of us just don't, off the top of our head, know what that is. Nor are we going to measure. So the cutting mat was really nice. Anyway, I thought that was a really great deal because the bench scraper, a stainless steel bench scraper, is kind of indispensable in your kitchen. I think there are a few kitchen tools that I really would have a hard time not having, and that's one of them, the bench scraper. So as you can see, you know, compared to a paleo dough, now my paleo cutout sugar cookie recipe, I don't have on the website right now, You can find a video of it. In fact, I'll find it and I'll link it up above. But it's a recipe that's on my old membership site, so that one's not up for free right now. But a paleo dough made with almond flour and arrowroot is delicious. However, it is a little more finicky to roll out. You definitely need a bench scraper or something like that when you work with that kind of dough. This gluten-free dough is really a dream to work with. It holds its shape really well. Holds its shape. Is that what I mean? Yeah, it holds its shape, but what I really meant to say was, like, I can cut it out and pick it up, and it's not as fragile. It's stuck. There we go. It's not super fragile, which is really, really nice. So just cut them all out. I'm just making pumpkins. We always make cutout sugar cookies in my family for Thanksgiving because my grandma did. It's just a tradition. We make leaves and turkeys and all that sort of thing. But now these are just pumpkin. These are pumpkin spice, pumpkin cutout cookies. So just cut them all out. These don't expand a ton in the oven. When I've been working on the recipe, I've always just put 6 on a tray, but I think I can probably get 8 without a problem. See, like it flopped over. It's fine. It's not breaking apart or anything. It smells really good, those warm spices. So just pull the sort of scraps of dough to the side because we'll work with those in a minute. You really don't need to refrigerate it in between. It'll be perfectly fine. I like to roll these out. I didn't have quite enough flour on my counter. That's why it's kind of sticking, but it's really fine. I like these cookies a little bit thicker, like 1/4 inch-ish. But that's just totally personal taste. You make them however thick or thin you want. The thinner you make them, first of all, the longer you will be standing here cutting out cookies. So that is something to consider. But also, the crispier they'll be, the faster they'll cook. This dough is moist enough. I don't need to add any additional water or anything. Just kind of knead it back together for a few seconds. Try to get it to an even thickness, but oh my goodness, don't drive yourself crazy with it or anything. Just cut out your cookies. It'll be okay. If one of those on your cookie sheet's a little thinner than another one. Perfect. And you know, since I squeezed 8 on the tray, I'm going to just get on another tray and I'll bake all 3 trays at once. And then when we get these in the oven, we'll talk icing. Now in the oven, these are going to go for 12 to 14 minutes. If you bake your cookies a little bit longer, they'll be a little crispier. If you bake them a little bit less, they will be a little softer. So you just make them how you like. To be done, I think they really need to cook for 12 minutes. If you want them a little crispier, go up to 14. So I'm going to teach you a icing recipe and then also a paint. So, you know, my grandma in her cookie baking, as I have already mentioned a couple times, she would make the prettiest cookies in the fall with the prettiest colors, and she did it using an egg yolk paint. So I recognize that might sound super weird to some of you, But you need a yolk. You need not to have that little, oh, I can't remember what it's called, the little protein thing. Let me pull that out. You know that little white, like, squiggly thing that holds the yolk in the middle of the egg? You got to get that out. You just need the yolk and then just a little bit of water, like a teaspoon or less. I'm just making 2 colors. One nice thing about this is it's really inexpensive. Obviously, it's paleo. And it is really inexpensive. So we still use our dye. So I have this, these are the gel colors from Wilton. I have worked with the natural food coloring before, and I mean, it's fine. It doesn't give you really intense color, but it is all natural. So if you have somebody in your house who can't have the dye, it works perfectly fine. But I have all these gel colors from back when I took a cake decorating class at Michael's. Obviously, some colors are going to be harder to make because you're starting with a yellow base, right? I'm making orange and I'm making green, and those are very easy to make with the yellow yolk. So this does actually work super well for fall themed cookies because you can make reds and oranges and browns and that sort of thing pretty easily. I want a little bit more intense orange. So what I did wrong was I put all my cookies in the oven. So when you do the paint, you paint them before you bake them. Icing, obviously, you put on afterwards. So I have this really pretty vibrant green. I'm trying to get more of that orange off of there. And then you just use a paintbrush. I have a whole bunch of those little cheap, like, kid paintbrushes, and I couldn't find them. So these are some of our art ones. It's a new kit. These hadn't been used. And you just paint it on. So I'm going to paint my green stems. And this is optional, but when I do the egg paint, I usually do the sugar. You put a little sugar on the egg. Obviously, it sticks really well. You can paint the whole thing, or you can just do kind of stripes like this. And then again, we have sugar. This is a natural orange, and so it's, so it doesn't have the sprinkly thing. It's not a very intense orange color. Okay, and then you bake them, just like normal. How cute our cookies are. These are the painted ones. So the orange is a little darker than, say, you know, the icing or what the color was before they were baked. But they're still super cute. You can tell they're pumpkins, right? They have a little bit of sweetness, extra sweetness, because we put the sprinkling sugar on top. But you could totally leave that off if you wanted to. Okay, that one just came from that batch. I'm going to talk to you about this icing. Okay, so icing is icing, right? It's sugar. There's some things you can do to make it a, quote, healthier choice, but it's never going to be healthy. You have to remember, first of all, you're not eating the whole batch, I hope. You're not eating the whole batch of icing, I hope. So it's just a little bit of sugar decoration, but you could totally leave it off. You can tell this is a pumpkin. It's really cute. It's going to taste delicious, just like it is, okay? But But if you want to decorate it, this is my icing recipe. I'll have it written down for you. It'll be part of this recipe that you can get on the website. It's 2 cups of powdered sugar, a tablespoon of meringue powder, not powdered egg whites. It's specifically called meringue powder. I'll show you mine. A couple years ago, during COVID, there was actually a shortage of this, along with a lot of other baking things. This is the Wilton brand. It's the only one I've ever purchased. So you can buy it at craft stores, places that sell Wilton products. Walmart typically has it. You can buy it online. It lasts a super, super, super long time. But it goes in some frostings, and I put it in my icing because it helps it to set, which I'll show you that because I've been perfecting this recipe. So we've been making a lot of batches of these pumpkin cookies. So I have some others that are completely done that I'll show you. So you need your powdered sugar, you need a tablespoon of this, and a tablespoon of corn syrup. Eek, I know. Corn syrup is not a health food. This is the only thing I use it for, except we just did a super cool science experiment with an egg and corn syrup. We were talking about osmosis. Anyway, so the corn syrup, 1 tablespoon in the whole batch. And if you've ever had a cookie that had royal icing decoration, you know that's like what you usually have with a gingerbread house, that kind of thing. That icing is super hard. It's sweet and it's really, really hard. It's really not enjoyable to eat. So when you make my version, which is the powdered sugar, it's the meringue powder, which is like sweetened egg white powder, basically. And then that little bit of corn syrup, it makes the icing harden so you can stack up your cookies, package them up. The icing won't smear like a frosting would. But it also tastes really good. It has a nice texture to it, and it tastes really good. So then a little bit of vanilla and a little bit of water. And so this is some that I had left over from yesterday. So mix it up, add your coloring to get the colors that you like, and then if you don't know this, take a glass, some kind of cup, open up your piping bag. I like to use good quality freezer storage bags. The cheap ones from, store brands are not going to work. They'll break. You need it doesn't have to be a name brand. These are from Aldi, but they're the freezer ones. They're a little bit thicker. And you don't want the ones that have like the gusseted bottom, that will stand up, because then the icing gets all messed up in there. Just the regular flat ones. Put them in your cup and fold the top over your cup. It just makes it a lot easier. So this will hold your bag for you while you pour your icing in. And then something else you can do. Oh, my rolling pin is dirty. I'll just use this little cup. But as your icing maybe you lay it down and go take care of a kid or something and come back, and your icing has kind of like oozed out through your whole bag, just take your rolling pin and roll it. And you'll get all your icing back down in the bottom where you want it to go. So this is how I do my pumpkins, to not have just gobs and gobs and gobs of icing on there. I'm doing this one upside down. You can, of course, frost the whole thing if you want, but I actually like it like this, and I think it's plenty, and I think they come out super cute. So there's the pumpkin. And then do your stem with green. And then a little wiggle, 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 and a little curly Q for the little tendrils. And then to do a leaf, just a little squiggle and then kind of pull it out so it looks like a leaf. And then do one on the other side. And that's it. Let me do one more for you. This icing, again, it's pretty easy to work with. Just pay attention to the thickness. Don't put in too much water at once. Put in just a little bit of water at a time. Mix it up really well. And then if you need to add more water, add a little bit more water. But just add it that little bit at a time. And like I said, it will set up really nicely. It takes a while, like 12-ish hours to really set up. So Have your counter clean. Don't need your counter for anything else right away. And just leave your cookies set out on your counter, and the icing will set up for you, and it'll be really nice and actually look nice and taste good. Okay, let me go get the batch I made yesterday and I'll show you those. So the icing hardens, it's not sticky at all, and yet it still tastes good. Let's see if I can find one of the palm shortening ones and show you the difference. You're not really going to be able to tell the difference. It's actually baked a little bit darker than the ones with butter. Yeah, you're probably not going to be able to tell any difference, but I can tell the difference in the taste. And these butter ones are a little softer, where I've decided they needed to bake a little bit longer. Yummy, so good. The ones with the egg paint and the sugar are also delicious and very nice texture. They're just not as sweet. This is a little bit crunchy from the egg and the sugar. They're delicious. So, I hope you get in the kitchen this fall and make some cookies. Don't have to save cookies for Christmas time. Cookies are good for any time. Have your kids help you. They don't have to look perfect. Let the kids just decorate and just know that at the end of the process, you're going to clean your floor. You're going to vacuum, you're going to sweep, you're going to mop, you're going to do all the things. But it is going to be so fun. As I have a 18-year-old about to leave for college, I was thinking back the other day on all the cooking that we would do together. I would put the kids on chairs. This was when we had a smaller island and we didn't have that overhang. We didn't have the stools. So I would just bring over the kitchen chairs and they would stand there and I would pretend I was their cooking teacher and I would talk in a really funny voice and teach them how to cook, and they would decorate, and it's just great memories. It's great memories for me. They may or may not remember. We have some videos, but it was a great time together, and I'm someone who really likes my house to be clean, so the messy part of it bothered me a good bit, to be perfectly honest, but I just learned to get over it, to clean really well at the end and enjoy the time, because you'll never be sad that you spent time with your kids. You'll be happy, like my smiley face cookie. All right, everybody. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you make these cookies. If you do, let me know what you think of them. And I hope you just are enjoying your fall time like I'm enjoying my fall time. And I look forward to seeing you next time in the kitchen. If you haven't subscribed, please do that. You know, that helps a whole bunch. I love it when you ask for topics for me to cover. A couple people talked about hormone balance and sleep, and boy, that is a huge topic. And I have been researching. And so be on the lookout for that. It is coming. It's a huge topic. And of course, I'm not a doctor, but I can certainly share some knowledge that I've acquired that hopefully will help you if those are some things that you're struggling with. All right, everybody, I hope you have a great day. I hope you get to enjoy some delicious cookies, and I will see you next time.